Okay, this video is going to be about the invasion storyline. And there are a lot of people out there who either love this storyline, or you like it, or you hate it. And I'm one of those people who, to me personally, if I were to compare this storyline to anything, I would compare it to like Batman Forever. I think the movie Batman Forever is the perfect movie to compare this storyline to, because there's a lot of people out there who like or hate Batman Forever, just like the invasion storyline, And me personally, I think that this is the Batman Forever of wrestling storylines, because it's not horrible at all. It's not by any means is it completely horrible, but it's nothing good. It's nothing, it's not, there are good moments to it, but it's just like, it's a letdown, it's like a type of movie that you would see, or a type of storyline you would see, and it's just like you had so much hype for it, you wanted it to be so much better than what it was, but in the aftermath of it, it just wasn't that great. It didn't do anything special. And it just wasn't that, just wasn't that good. It was just like, whatever, it was just, it was there, it was just, they had a great opportunity to bring in like a lot of ECW guys and WCW guys that, they really could have made this thing really get hot and get over really, really well. And sorry, man, it's fucking allergies, man. The weather up here is just so shitty. It's either hot one day or cold the next day. It's just annoying as shit. Fuck the weather. But basically, this storyline, it really could have been a lot better than what it was. And basically, and if I were to have done it, and if I were to rebook it, I would have basically got like all the big names: Goldberg, Sting, getting like a lot of key members of the NWO. I would have brought in like Scott Steiner, definitely. I mean, I would have just bought out AOL's contracts, because basically, if you look at a guy like Vince McMahon and you agree with him, and you say, oh well, you know what, the AOL Time Warner contracts were too expensive. They were too expensive to buy out. How could we? It was just. It would have cost a fortune to buy out all those guys' contracts. And my thing was, this storyline happened in 2001. The WWF was at billionaire. It was basically $1 billion company in that year. They had so much money. Vince McMahon had so much money that he could actually launch a failed attempt at a football league like the XFL, yet you're going to expect me to believe that you can't buy out Scott Steiner, Goldberg, and all these other guys like Sting's contracts? Get the fuck out of my face. And Hogan wasn't even under contract with WCW anymore. He could have easily you had Razor Ramon and Hulk Hogan could have easily been a part of the invasion storyline, because they weren't even part of WCW anymore. They both got fired in the summer of 2000. Well, Hogan quit, basically. Well, WCW couldn't afford. If you watch Vince Russo's shoot interview, he basically explains that, the night after he did the infamous, what we would call nowadays a pipe bomb against Hulk Hogan, he pretty much buried him, he trashed him, did a shoot on him. There's a work shoot at Bash of the Beach 2000. He basically stated that, that was all work, and that, he was going to call Hogan the next day, but they never called him because they couldn't afford to put him on the show. So Hogan basically filed a lawsuit. So he was pretty much done with WCW at that point. Scott Hall was pretty much done with WCW at that point. He even made a few ECW appearance shows, in 2000. So it was like, you could have got those guys easily. You could have signed those guys to the WWF easily. They weren't even under contract with Time Warner. So, you had two guys from the NWO right there that could have made some pretty crazy heat. And you fucked up DDP's storyline so much with that Undertaker, obsessing over Sarah shit. And it was just like, why the fuck? Like, what the fuck were you thinking with that storyline? DDP was basically like the Stone Cold Steve Austin of WCW. Even though he wasn't really the face of WCW, that honor goes to like Goldberg and to a certain extent Sting, and even Hogan to a certain extent. But still, I mean, he was like he was like the people's champion of WCW. But he was like this rebellious, he's from Jersey. He didn't give a fuck. He was, and you fucked that storyline up when he came to up north, to New York, as they would say. They could have easily made like a lot of money with DDP. Booker T, another guy who pretty much got screwed over. But I mean, you can't really blame Booker T getting screwed over in WWE due to the fact that he was champion during WCW's dying days. He became a 5-time champion during the dying days of WCW. So it wasn't. This was like a while after David Arquette won the title, and it pretty much they didn't really see WCW as they didn't see Booker T as like the face of WCW. They didn't see him as like the number one guy to be like the man of the company. But it's just that's neither here nor there. I got a lot of respect for Booker T, but I could see why they wanted him to basically start from scratch in WWF, because he was WCW champion at a time where WCW was like in such dire shit. It was shit. It was just complete and utter dog shit at that point. So Vince Russo, he botched. He didn't do a good job at all. He fucked up. He had some interesting moments. For the most part, they fucked it. They fucked everything up in 2000. And I'm a firm believer that if guys like Vampiro should have came to to the WWE as well during this time, because I mean, like Sean O'Hare was another one who should have got pushed. He was new, but he could have, like, I honestly, in the year 2000, there are 4 guys that really stand out as guys that could have saved WCW, or at least have brought the ratings up. I'm a firm believer in Scott Steiner, Goldberg, Vampiro, and Sean O'Hare. And people want to say, well, Sean O'Hare was part of the Natural Born Thrillers at the time, but yeah, but still, he stood out more than anybody. He stood out more than Chuck Palumbo. He stood out more than Mike Sanders, Mike Jindrak. He stood out more than everybody. To me, I saw Sean O'Hare as like the guy. He could have been the guy. He could have been the new face of WCW at that point. But he really had so much potential. He was very athletic. And as we would find out in 2003, he was good on the mic as well. And this guy had it all. He could have made so much money in this business. It's not even funny. But those are like the Vampiro should have definitely made an appearance in the WWF. He could have had like a really good rivalry with like Kane. Or he could have had a good rivalry with Undertaker. He could have had like a good rivalry with like a lot of darker characters in that company. Well, Undertaker was doing the American Badass thing at the time, but he could have had he could have made some money with Kane. That could have been like a good storyline. They could have like done something. But I always wanted to see Daphne from WCW have a feud with Lita. That would have been sick. Or hell, you know what? That could have been a sick feud, like Vampiro and the Hardy Boys, especially Jeff Hardy or Raven. Well, Raven and Vampiro had a feud already, but still, Raven was under contract with WWE at the time, so they could have made some great television with that. Be like, oh, we fought each other in every promotion we've been in and stuff like that. That could have been cool. But it's just. This storyline was just nothing amazing. It was very, and I would say that ECW, even ECW side of the invasion, it was just kind of weak because Taz at that point was past his prime. Raven, they didn't do anything with him. So basically the only guy that really stood out, only guys were like the Dudleys and Rob Van Dam that really stood out from the ECW side. Because everybody else, like Just Incredible, like, we all know he was a mid-card. He wasn't shit in the WWE. He was with X Factor. He was with X-Pac and Albert. Mike Awesome, he could have stood out. Lance Storm to a certain extent stood out. But it was just like, too little. It was just like too little, it wasn't that good. They didn't push him right. So, I mean, and basically, like, when I look at the ECW side of the alliance, I'm like, I just look at like guys like Rob Van Dam and the Dudleys, really the only guys who really got that much of a push, from the ECW side of the invasion. So, I would have done that differently. Basically, you have, who else did you have? Like, even it was just like it was just a mess. It was just everyone started sucking up to Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was basically like Stone Cold Steve Austin versus the WWF, with a few ECW and WCW guys thrown in. That's basically what it was. And Shane and Stephanie being a part of that thing was kind of I could see Shane makes sense, but Stephanie, that made no. What hatred does she have with her father in any of the previous storylines leading up to this? I mean, Shane, yeah, because he hated the fact that Vince was disgracing, his mother, making her, putting her in a wheelchair and stuff like that. That made sense. But Stephanie was on her dad's side the whole time. So why the fuck would she go to buy ECW? That made no sense. It wasn't logic. I mean, if you were paying attention to the storylines at the time, this made absolutely no sense. None. Absolutely none. And it was just like, okay, like, why are you on ECW? Like, and I was thinking, like, if Triple H had been involved in this invasion storyline, what sense would that have made, period? Would he have been on ECW too? Would he have been in the Alliance as well? Because they were both. It made no sense. Stephanie should have just stayed with the WWF or have just been off screen during that entire storyline. Just stay off screen. Don't even come. Just stay with your husband. Look after him. Make sure he's getting better so when he comes back, But, I mean, she had no business being on television during that storyline. She really didn't. None. None at all. But Stone Cold defecting to the Alliance was like the stupidest thing. It made no sense. None. Because it basically was saying, WCW is shit, ECW is shit. We need Stone Cold in order to make the Alliance have any credibility. And that's like, no. That's like, no, come on. If I was in charge of this invasion story, I would have done it completely differently. And they could have done it completely differently. I mean, because I'm sick of hearing people saying that, the AOL Time Warner contracts were too fucking expensive to buy out. I mean, bullshit. He fucking launched the XFL in 2001. So, I mean, he could have bought out those contracts. I mean, the WWF was like one of the most highest rated shows. Any show, whether it was Raw or SmackDown, or even Sunday Night Heat. All those shows got like really high ratings during the Attitude Era. So they had like so much money. Like, shirts were falling off the shelves. Everyone was buying a Rock and Stone Cold t-shirt. Even Cactus Jack t-shirts were flying off the shelves. Everyone was buying that shit. So you're gonna tell me that you couldn't afford to buy out a lot of these guys' contracts? Get the fuck out. Yes, you could. If you could have bought out WCW for like $3 million, you could have bought out a lot of these guys' contracts. Don't give me that shit. I don't buy it for a second. To me, this was all conspiracy. I mean, and people say like, oh well, $3 million is a lot of money. In the world of Vince McMahon, no, it's not. No, it's not. I don't even want to say in the world of wrestling. In the world of wrestling, but especially in the world of the WWE and Vince McMahon, $3 million is chump change. So he could have bought out those motherfuckers' contracts. I don't buy that for a second. You know, basically, you know, this storyline could have been much better because it was basically, you know, and you just look back at like September of 2001 and how like Kurt Angle got over basically because of, you know, the 9/11 stuff. You know, he was basically the American hero, and Austin sold that storyline more. And no disrespect to Kurt Angle, because he's one of the best of all time, but you know, Austin stole that storyline more than anything, because everyone hated Austin at that point. It was like, how do you turn your top babyface into somebody that everyone will hate? And this was not smart business, like when Hogan turned heel in WCW. No, this was not smart, because Austin was still in his prime. He was still over his shit. Everyone was cheering for this motherfucker. And it was like, no, you don't. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Alright? This was nowhere near broke. It wasn't like Hogan in WCW in 96, where he was basically like, his parts were starting to rust and shit like that, and you had to fix it. No, this was not the case in the WWF in 2001. You know, and especially if The Rock was gonna leave to do the Scorpion King, you're gonna turn your other babyface heel. Like, is that smart business? No. The Rock is leaving to do a fucking movie, and you're gonna turn Stone Cold Steve Austin heel. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Fucking stupid. Fucking stupid. You know, and they basically, it's like, what were they thinking? You know, it's just like, come on. It made no sense. None. You know, it should have been like, this storyline could have been so much better. So much fucking better. But, you know, I didn't hate it. Because looking at the WWE now, it's hard to hate this storyline, because you've seen so many storylines botched, like the Nexus storyline, CM Punk, and it's like, you know, compared to all those, this storyline was pretty damn good compared to all that shit. You know, obviously, if you were a WCW or ECW fan, you probably hated this storyline, and I don't blame you. But to me, I've seen worse storylines in this company, and, you know, it wasn't like that bad. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't unwatchable. It was at least watchable. But, you know, with all the potential you had, and a lot of these really great superstars that you had, Crowbar could have been feuding with like Crash Holly even. I mean, if you look at the WCW hardcore division, they could have put Crowbar, a lot of these guys like Vito, Johnny the Bull Stamboli, who eventually came to the company in 2002, and Johnny Stamboli, you know, he was shit. He didn't have it, but I mean, you could at least put these motherfuckers in the hardcore division, you know, to make it in, which they eventually did in 2002, but it would have made more sense because, again, WCW versus WWF, you know, which would have made more sense. We're like, oh, we're going to take the hardcore division. But ECW stole the show. You know, when Rob Van Dam, he beat Jeff Hardy for the hardcore. That stole the show. So I guess I don't really have too many complaints, but to me, it would have made more sense if they would have brought in, like, Vampiro or Crowbar, a lot of these guys trying to take the hardcore title. You know, that would have been pretty cool too, but, you know, it is what it is, man, you know. But this storyline to me could have been much better than what it was. And yeah, that's just my thoughts on the Invasion storyline.